All right. Hey, what's going on, everybody? So tonight I want to talk about a little bit as far as what the Lord has been showing me and through this process of just recording a video on a daily basis and kind of just putting my thoughts out into the interwebs, right? And talking about my faith, talking about my walk with the Lord and what it's been like, how it's been like, and kind of a little bit about my journey. One of the things that I feel compelled to do is just, dig into the scriptures, because I think, it's great to hear somebody's story, but we also want to know too, as far as like what God is it that you're talking about, right? Something that's been very interesting to me in understanding God is just the reality that He is the one true God, but the Bible also refers to other gods. It's always interesting to think about how you look at the Ten Commandments and it starts with you shall not have any other God besides me, and how God talks about that He is a jealous God, and that not that He is jealous of us, but that He's jealous for us. He made us for Him so that He would be able to enjoy our presence and our relationship and our fellowship. And so when He's talking about being jealous for us, is that He wants to spend time with you. It's similar to how a husband is jealous for his wife. Like, he wants her attention. He wants her affection to be solely devoted to him and not any other man, And I know that sometimes even within marriage, within having kids, that can be something to kind of navigate through, right? Especially when you have a lot of kids. And if you go through that phase of it's just you and your spouse, and then kids start to come along, and then the husband almost becomes like an afterthought, right? And it's like, wait, what about me? It's like you've seen your son or your daughter getting all the attention, and then you just become like, hey, I need your support, I need your help. And it can really become one of those things where, as a man, you can kind of start to feel as even just, what am I? Just a paycheck, just here for support. And even through that process, I remember going through that process, and after 5 kids, I would like to think that I'm in a little bit better place, but for the first few, it was rough. I really had to give up myself, or learn to die to self, and realize that I am here to serve my family. I am here to serve my wife, and it's not that I'm second place in them, but in my heart, it's them before me. And this is something that really helped me as far as understanding, especially when it comes to men. I think one of the things that we always struggle with is intimacy, right? Intimacy in the bedroom. And I can't tell you the amount of men that I've spoken with, and then they always feel like, man, I'm just being neglected in that area, or I'm not my needs are not being met, right? But we ever seldom think about, like, really put into perspective. And the Lord really helped me to put that into perspective, because for a season of my life, I was right there. I was like, man, my needs are not being met. I remember me and my buddy Mike, before we were married, when we were single guys, we would daydream and talk about how awesome it's going to be once we're actually married. Because, hey, once we're married, we're going to have GFS all the time. It's just going to be a GFS fest. And GFS stands for guilt-free sex, right? And marriage isn't like that. I mean, there is that. There is GFS. GFS is a real thing. But I think as a young man, my perception of what it would be versus the reality of what it is completely different, right? And sometimes we look at our parents, and I'm sure many people out there have done this. You look at your parents, and it's like, man, I'm not gonna be like them. I'm not gonna be that. And then you get in, and then you get into actual marriage and you get punched in the face and you're like, oh, wait, this is what they were going through. I thought it was just my parents being dysfunctional, and they didn't know how to actually operate like adults, which in a way it's true, right? I've told you all that I came from a Catholic background, and so I never really remember my parents actually being taught or being shown a healthy marriage. And then even hearing some of the stories of my grandparents and from both sides of the family, it's like, not any much better. So I remember my mom telling me a story about my dad about how rough my grandfather was, and how just angry my grandmother was, and how just malicious she was even towards my mom. And I'm like, dang. And then now that I'm an adult and having gone through marriage, I remember there was an experience that I had when I was really going through a really tough season with my wife and I. We were just, it was rough. Like, stuff was coming out of me. The Lord was dealing with things inside my heart that He was like, hey, we need to get rid of that. We needed to really deal with that sin nature in there and get rid of that and just replace it with something new, with a new thing, But anyways, I say all that to say that during that process, because that was something that I was really struggling with, a feeling like, man, I'm just being neglected. My wife is not fulfilling me, being as intimate with me as I would like her to be, I would like to have, I think as guys, a lot of times we say, it's like, man, I want it all the time, right? It's like, and I realized that it wasn't necessarily that she wasn't fulfilling my needs, is that I was using it as a crutch. I was using it as a vice to when I would get stressed out, or I would get, overwhelmed, or, like things just get too much, and be like, okay, I need some relief. I need some attention, and not realizing that, like, hey, I'm putting that above God. Instead of me going to God and saying, like, hey, this is the problem that I'm facing with, can you help me find a solution, or just laying it at the Lord's feet, I was, trying to use that as a coping system. But one of the things that the Lord really revealed to me about that is like, it's like, Juan, I've answered your prayers as far as meeting that need. I gave you your wife, and she has met those needs. Those needs are met. Now, the fact that you are acting like a little child and you're getting upset and you're doing a tantrum because she is not meeting your needs when you want your needs met, doesn't mean that your needs are not being met. They have been met. And he put in the metaphor as far as comparing it to my two-year-old son. If you've ever seen a child or a 2-year-old boy, a toddler, do a tantrum because they don't get the treat, they don't get the food, they don't get the snack that they want when they want it, and you've seen parents, they just give into that. It's like, all right, fine, here, have it. What does that child learn to do? The child learns to do that, hey, if I do the tantrum, my parents are going to respond, and they're going to fulfill that desire that I want. Well, the flesh is the same way. If you are constantly feeding the flesh, and it may be in a holy, good, within the confines of marriage, which is a good thing, and in the proper way in which that need needs to be filled. But even within marriage, it can be twisted. It can be perverted. And let me tell you all, I found so much freedom when the Lord revealed that to me. And he said, because I remember telling my son, quit whining, you're gonna get fed. Just because you don't get fed right now does not mean that I'm not gonna feed you. I'm going to feed you. You may have to wait a little bit, but you're gonna be fed. And then he put that on me. He said, it's the same thing with you. When you do that, you're like, oh, my needs are not being met. oh Lord, like my wife is like, she's not doing her wifely duties. And it's like, calm down. Your needs are going to be met. Just because they're not being met right now when you want them does not mean that they're not going to be met. And let me tell you, I have found so much freedom in that. And just understanding that just because my needs are not met at the exact moment that I'm hungry does not mean that I'm not going to eat. I will eat. And let me tell you something that really helped me tame that was fasting. I've done fast before, but for this, it took prolonged fasting. I'm talking about 3 days, 5 days, a week. Build it up all the way up to 21 days. And it was in that period of fasting where it's almost like the flesh became quiet and became still. And there's that scripture, that psalm that talks about, be still and know that I am God. And it's almost like my flesh experienced that. It's like, hey, be still and know that he is God. And that the desires, the needs, the hungers that you have, they have been fulfilled. And just because they don't get fulfilled at exactly when we want them does not mean that they haven't been fulfilled. And that's been a real blessing. Because it's really taking my marriage to a different area. It's taking me to a different area of, because that desire still comes, like where I'm like, oh man, I would love some attention. But then I have peace, I have rest in my heart and in my flesh, knowing that the Lord has blessed me with an amazing wife. If I go to her and say, hey, I'm feeling like this, can you help me out? She says, I will. I'll help you out. It may not be right at that moment, but that gives her time to plan and be like, okay, I gotta take care of my husband. And you think about it, it's so simple, right? Because you think about it when a toddler does that, and they come to you and they say, hey, mama, I'm hungry. Oh, thank you. Let me finish what I'm doing. And then once I'm done doing what I'm doing right now, I'm gonna go get you a snack. And when the toddler has been trained to control their appetites, what does he do? Okay, he knows he's going to get fed. And I remember hearing a pastor or a preacher one time talking about this, like when is the best time to train a man to control his sexual appetite? When they're babies, when they're toddlers. If you don't teach your children how to control their physical appetites, their hunger, then how can you expect them to grow up to be men that can control their sexual appetites? And I was like, that hit me so hard, because I was like, you're basically saying that I'm acting like a toddler, and in some areas worse than a toddler. Man. Anyways, I don't know, I just got into that story, but I think it was worth mentioning, and hopefully it'll bless somebody. It'll be a benefit to somebody out there. Either way, shout out to Mike and our GFS conversations. I know that's something that him and I would talk about all the time, so I thought it would be funny to share. So I guess the moral of that story is that eventually, if you learn to control your appetites and learn to die to self and not have your appetites control you, then you do get to a point to where there is GFS, lots of GFS. Anyways, so one of the things that I want to do moving forward, and this is something that I feel like the Holy Spirit is just really telling me, but he's telling me to kind of just dive into the scriptures and just, really, I don't know what this is going to turn into. I think right now I'm just doing this out of obedience. I'm just doing it just as a practice. I felt like he's telling us, hey, record a video, try to build a habit every day. And even today, I felt like, man, I don't know if I have time to do this, but I was like, you know what? I got to be faithful. I'm going to be faithful to this. Even if it's not a long video, even if it's a short video, Lord, whatever words you have for me to speak, let it be you speaking through me. And here I got on thinking I was going to read from the book of Genesis, but somehow we got into GFS. Hey, that's okay. That's okay. God can do whatever he wants to do. He's in control. And another thing that I want to touch on that as far as being God in control, he is in control. He really is in control. And I want to go into more detail and kind of expand on this, because another thing that I've been thinking about as far as like my journey with the Lord, as I've been walking with him for the last almost 20 years now. And, I've talked about how growing up Catholic, it was this very much a religion, very much a works type mentality. It's like, hey, like I remember basically my hope being that, hey, as long as I can make it into purgatory, and hopefully I'll have a bunch of kids and they'll be able to pray me out of purgatory, right? And then as I became a Christian, going from that phase of thinking like, okay, life is going to be really good because I'm a Christian now. So like the past is like, it's dealt with, it's like whatever. But in the last few years where the Lord's like saying, has been saying to me, is like, hey, we got to deal with the past, because you've been carrying stuff, and the stuff that you're carrying, if we don't deal with it, it's going to get passed on to the next generation. And he really showed that to me as far as even when we look in Genesis, how we all have to deal with Adam's sin, regardless if we've sinned or not, right? Because of our forefather, Adam, who allowed sin to come into the world. So therefore, we all have to deal with it. It is literally encoded in our DNA, in our bloodline, because we are descendants of Adam. We have to deal with the sin of the first Adam. And that's why the Bible talks about that Christ came to replace the first Adam, and he became the second Adam. So through the first Adam, death and sin came into the world. So through the second Adam, life and righteousness has been restored. And it was by the shedding of blood, right? So the first Adam's blood was corrupted, that through his blood, passing on to the next generation, that sin nature has been passed on from generation to generation. And then you deal with iniquities. I've been doing this. It's fascinating just learning about the bloodlines and the effects of what our parents and our grandparents and our great grandparents have done that could be impacting us in our present time, because that's carried in us. And how the Bible talks about that the Lord delights in those that love him, and he will bless them to multiple generations, but then to also the curse, like the sin can be passed on to our children if we don't deal with it, right? And it's not so, salvation, it's not just about saying a prayer, saying, hey, Jesus, I believe you, I receive you. It's about believing loyalty. And what is that? It's an everyday walking with the Lord on a daily basis. And I've been listening to some of my previous journals, and it's interesting how I've gone from the phase of saying, I know about you, to I know you, to asking the Lord, do you trust me? And now I feel like the Lord is asking me, well, do you trust me? And I never thought about that. Because one of the things that I remember getting hung up on was the fact that, was I trustworthy? This is when I was single. I'd be like, man, how is God going to trust me with his creation? How is God going to trust me with a spouse? How is God going to trust me with his children? And the Lord has blessed me with that. He's blessed me with an amazing wife and amazing children. And in doing so, I feel him say, hey, I trust you. I trust you with my creation. And then even a funny story is our fifth child was very much a surprise baby. My wife and I, we both thought that we were done at number 4. And then all long and behold, I don't know, we were like, we didn't know how it happened, but I mean, obviously we know how it happened, but find out that she's pregnant with the 5th child, and we're like, wow. And I remember calling my mentor and telling him about it. And some of the first words came out of his mouth. He's like, Juan, God trusts you with his creation. And that really just struck a chord with me. And it was so powerful to hear those words. And now what I've been hearing in my spirit is the Lord saying is like, do you trust me? Because let me tell you all, I'm not going to go too long in this video, but let me just wrap up with this story. Today was a rough day. Emotionally, it's been a little bit of an emotional roller coaster, especially the last 2 weeks, especially after, being part of the news of, hey, you've been laid off. It's like, I know there's a little bit of comfort and security, like, okay, I got pension, not a pension, but I got a severance coming, so we're going to be fine for the next couple of months. But it's almost like the Lord saying, like, hey, do not put your trust in that, put your trust in me. And he's asking me, do you trust me? And I'm saying, yes, Lord, I trust you. And I feel like even this right here, recording these videos, being faithful with that, is like, I want to show him. I want to show him that I trust him. Because I know he's trustworthy. Because I've seen too much. I've experienced too much of his goodness. And he's such a good God. He's such a loving Father. But anyways, I don't want to ramble on too much. Just wanted to jump on here and record a little bit. I thought I was going to read scripture, but I guess not tonight. Keep on praying about this and see what this turns into. But anyways, hope this bless y'all. And have a good night.